Last time we got to the point where the emergence of, you can say, a self-aware being, well, was a great fact of evolutionary life. That is where we were last time. Now today we take up the idea from there. That is to say, man in the universe is really existence or conscious existence that has become self-aware. Self-aware being is man. And this is conscious self-existence which has become aware. And this is, in the language of the Veda, called the dawn. It is a dawn that has arisen. Dawn has come. This dawn symbol, used by many religions and many traditions in the past, representing the awakening of consciousness to light, is here in Sri Aurobindo's outlook, embodied here or represented here as the emergence of the self-aware being into the cosmos. Something self-aware came into being. Well, that was the dawn. And this self-aware being is, as we saw, Satchidananda. That is what we were talking here last time on the third, you see. Then forms represent this infinite being, infinite consciousness, and infinite delight, but the forms do not exhaust it. They represent, but they do not exhaust. And therefore, in one sense, we can say that Satchidanand is the unknown which the human consciousness is seeking all the time. This self-awareness in form represents this infinity of being, infinity of consciousness, infinity of delight. But it does not know that it is seeking that, though in reality and essentiality it is only seeking that. In man, therefore, this universal existence has become self-aware, and it has therefore the chance of becoming master of itself. And because this self-awareness promises a chance of self-mastery, it is called the dawn. And this self-awareness first unfolds itself in the human individual. This self-awareness of the whole cosmos, this self-existence of the infinite, the conscious awareness of the infinite, and the conscious delight first makes itself aware in the human individual. Awareness, so to say, wakens with the human individuality. And therefore, as he says, the chance is established for mastery and for, you can say, further unfoldment of the human individual towards the fulfillment of that which has unrolled itself as the cosmos. The individual and the universal are the terms of this unknowable which represents to man as the Satchidananda, as the infinite. This unknowable to mind, when we say unknowable, we do not mean to say that it is absolutely something which cannot be known by any means. But to the mind, this unknowable Satchidananda represents itself in two terms, the individual and the universal. The two terms of the divine Satchidananda. This ascent and revelation, ascent are progressive. Now this can be done, means this ascent of the individual consciousness to the universal, to the transcendent, has to become a gradual process. I just told you that human consciousness is unconsciously seeking this unknown, which is really speaking the Satchidananda. And this emergence of self-awareness in the cosmos has to become to the human individual an ascent and a revelation. Ascent in the sense that he has to progress to another consciousness. He has to widen himself into universality, into transcendence. And when man says he wants to progress, what he means is that he wants to ascend to from the station of the individual consciousness or this self-awareness that is awakened in the cosmos to the universality, to the transcendence. In this lies, really speaking, man's progress. Man's progress does not lie in moving towards fulfillment of his vital desires and his mental ideas, his forms and his emotional being, but it consists in growing towards, ascending to a universal consciousness, widening out from the individual into the cosmic or universal consciousness, and from there rising to the highest ascent possible, the transcendent consciousness. That is the real line of progress to the individual. That is really progress. Well, that should be really the progress of the progress in the real sense of the term. Well, it should be so in a double sense. First, watch the working out of this Satchidananda consciousness in the cosmos. Then there you see that an infinite energy, you can say an universal energy if you like, first works out itself in dumb material forms. See, it is like a Satchidananda almost in trance in matter. You first see the working out of this cosmic energy in dumb forms of matter where the Satchidananda seems to be, as it were, well, in sleep. Satchidananda is, as it were, in trance. The world of matter is the first expression of this cosmic energy or this transcendent unknown Satchidananda, first takes up the form of this trance of matter. And in this trance it is, well, dumb material world. And from there it struggles slowly upwards and then becomes a life energy or rhythm of life energy, varied rhythm of life energy. Life forms, infinite and multiple forms of life manifesting themselves in, well, varied rhythms of vital energy. And yet we see that this life is not self-expression. Life is a dumb movement of seeking. Life is a dumb movement of, trying to come to itself. It is not as if life is self-aware in all the patterns or in all the designs or in all the rhythms of life. We do not find that. The self-awareness in the animal is not there, in the vegetable kingdom is not there. So that self-awareness has not yet come, though a greater degree of consciousness has come into existence or expression. And life, therefore, slowly has to struggle into mind. And in the mind, you, for the first time, well, you arrive at a subjective self, that is to a conscious individuality. So that this infinite consciousness, being and delight, taking up dumb sleep of matter or dumb trance of matter and creating forms which are, really speaking, which gives you the first sense of division, the first sense of multiplicity, first sense of separateness of substance. From there it struggles into life, and life into infinite patterns and variations of life. and it struggles into mind and creates an individual. So the labor of that cosmic energy all along was to create this individual, to create this self-aware center of receptivity, a subjective self. Thus you will see, as he says in Life Divine, that universe as a whole is a diffusion of this divine all in infinite time and infinite space.
Where is that?
The universe,
Yeah, what page?
I don't know. I don't. Universe is a diffusion of the divine all in infinite time and in infinite space. And from that very point of view, the individual is its concentration and not diffusion. You see, first there is a sort of a diffusion, throwing itself out into a multiplicity, so to say, or an innumerable variety in matter or in life or in mind. But the individual is the concentration of the divine within limits of time and space. Concentration of the divine in limits of time and space. And then we try to see in what consists, you see, this conscious individuality is the breaking up of the dawn, as he said. This coming into existence of a conscious individual in an inconscient universe, that is the dawn. You see, this waking, that is a very, he puts it at one place, it is a crucial point or a crisis in the process of evolution. The crisis in process of evolution came when mind woke up into self-awareness and the individual was created, because then he brings into potentiality or in actual dynamic movement the process of, well, expanding out from the individual into the cosmic, into the transcendent. Well, that process becomes possible only when the mind comes into existence in self-awareness of man and the creation of subjective individuality take place. And this individual now is created, individual center of reception or self-awareness or concentration of the divine in a limited time and space. And then the whole of universe comes to this individual. How does the whole universe comes to this individual? It comes to the individual in the form of life. You see, being living and being mental, it comes to him as life, first of all. The whole cosmos approaches the individual as life, a dynamic movement of life. And what man has to do, this awakened consciousness, this self-awareness of the individual has to do, is to master this life and its secret, to know what it is. In mastering this universe coming to the individual as life, you can say lies man's line of progress. He has to know and master this. Well, therein consists the first chance of, you can say, the true progress of man. And this life, which is a universe now coming to the individual, to this life which is coming to the individual, representing the whole of the universe, whole of the cosmos, individual is a center that holds all the potentialities that are, that it is capable of rising to. The life comes to the human individual. Of course, it presents itself first as a challenge, then as an opposite force, as a hostile thing, as a difficulty, as an obstacle, as an attachment, as something in which man can go on eternally, winding his way and enjoying himself eternally, and so on. It is true that life, when it comes to the individual does not immediately say, I want to conquer and understand the secret of it. No. He is enamored of it, he is taken hold of it, he is attached to it, he doesn't understand it, but he is attracted by it. And then he goes all over and thinks that life is something marvelous. That is all the problem of today, in spite of all the progress which man has made. The problem today is that man is simply taken up by life and not by the need of understanding what is life, or enter into the secret of what is life, or trying to go beyond and answer the demand of life. Life is not demanding of man that man enjoy or man subject himself to desire and impulse. Life is coming to man with an idea that he holds in himself the potentiality of fulfilling life. And man, instead of trying to understand, master, comprehend and transform life, what he does, he goes under life, and see, he simply admits the life as something, summum bonum, as a desire, as a desideratum, so to say, of his existence. And thus the difficulty is that life doesn't get what it wants from the individual. Universe does not get its full, reply from the individual, because the individual does not understand what the life is already demanding of him. Life comes to the individual, the whole cosmos, universe comes to the awakened individual as life. And man accepts this as if it was something grand that has come. In fact, the universe is coming to the individual with a question, with a demand, that please give me the ultimate secret, because from life this mind, awareness of mind has come into being. And here is a subjective being that can know itself, that can comprehend, that can understand, that can master. And therefore life comes to the individual with this problem. Well, the individual, instead of understanding, mastering, and enter into the secret of life, well, submits himself to the demand of life, and the result is that the fulfillment of life is not attained in the individual. The individual, on the contrary, goes on playing with the forces of life and submitting himself to its powers, which are well known, and that has created all the problems, you see. Well, in this spirit, the life spirit that comes to the man as the universe coming to the individual, well, in individual it feels all the potentialities. An individual is the center. Man is the center of these potentialities which are higher than life. And man is capable of incarnating in life the divine consciousness. You see, and this potentiality life feels is in man. But, well, when it approaches, the man is not able to answer, so to respond to this. And instead of, and in trying to do this movement, life evolves also mind, which is another intermediate term between matter and spirit. Well, mind is another intermediate term. So how do we then affirm or come to a conviction that possibility of divine life can exist in life? Where does lie the basis of possibility of divine life? In affirmation of something essentially superior to the present self of man. If man can be made to accept, to affirm that something essentially superior to his present self is possible of attainment, it is desirable to make an effort to attain it, well, that lays down the basis of life divine. And you will see that if you look at it from that point of view, then people all the time, when they meet with difficulties in life, obstacles, dangers, and all kinds of sufferings, they say that life is like that. Say life is condemned, something that is eternally subject to suffering and pain and all kinds of. It will be like that. I have seen so many good, well-intentioned people, giving up this problem, saying it is insoluble. It will be like that forever and forever. That was the great Well, you can say exaggeration of Buddha also, that he exaggerated this aspect of life by saying that life was something that was not, you know, not capable of perfection, so to say. It itself was an condemnation. It was an infliction to be born was to be condemned almost, you see. That you began with a legacy of suffering. Now, he did not see at that time what Sherando now is trying to make us see, that this life cosmic is coming to the individual with a question that you hold within yourself the potentiality of mastering life and of affirming something greater than what you are. Can you affirm it? That's what the question life is asking. If you can affirm, then life divine becomes immediately possible. Then is life a condemnation? You see, then you will see that life becomes an opportunity. It is not a punishment, but a condition of progress. Life becomes a condition for progress to something greater than the self-awareness which man has attained up till now. You see, that is how he wrote in Savitri, I think. What is it? He said, existence is a divine experiment. Existence is a divine experiment, and cosmos, the soul's opportunity. Yeah. Cosmos, the soul's opportunity. It is not as it were one life was condemned to put into some condition in which there was never any hope going to be any chance of perfection. On the contrary, it is a condition for attaining something which has to be attained. Well, in Buddhism, this exaggeration of pain has come, and that has perhaps been responsible for, for a sort of a confusion in the mental world today, because many people, very sincere seekers sometimes, have been obsessed by this sense that because the immediate, occupies them. He says in Life Divine, in Savitri, that Ashwapati, the representative of human spirit and human progress and culture in the process of evolution, he saw the life that is from a life that is to be. From a life to be, he saw the life that is. Today, what happens is that man only sees what is. And he can't see the potentiality of life. But he saw what is from what is to be. And then he could see the justification of all the obstacles and all the complications and the obstacles to the path of what is to be, so that everything was seen not as if this was going to be a permanent state of consciousness, not as if, oh, eternally man will remain. Then you will admit that ignorance is a permanent part of the cosmos, a permanent element of the cosmos. And then in that case, well, if God is conceived or as admitted or believed in, then his omniscience becomes something, meaningless. If ignorance is given a perpetual place or a permanent, admitted as a permanent element of cosmic constitution, then the omnipotence of the divine becomes meaningless. Because ignorance seems to be more powerful and more potent than divine's omnipotence, no? Yes, then in that case, so there is the whole rub. The whole trouble comes in there. That's why he lays down that if the self-aware individual admits that there is a possibility of awakening to, rising to a condition better than itself, well, that is the beginning of life divine. That is the establishment of life divine. That is the basis. And that has been a permanent effort of human being throughout the ages. So that constantly throughout the ages, the effort has been to create life divine on earth. Well, we take up the second chapter now, where there is a problem of ego and dualities. May take up this chapter now, and in between there is something to be done, but that will come. We see that an infinite being, infinite consciousness, and infinite delight is the cause and the material substance of the creation, and that it is that which is putting itself out into cosmic and individual, manifestation or terms. Till it is not being, it is not infinity, it is not knowledge, it is not, harmony that one sees, but one sees in life difficulties, suffering, pain, death, evil. These are more apparent and more, more in evidence than the evidence of the infinite delight or infinite consciousness in infinite being. Harmony is not spontaneously experienced by men. Discord, conflict, difficulty, danger and suffering and evil, that seems to be the more constant experience of the human being, the self-aware being that we saw. Now, why is this there? This is due to the divided being. And this difficulty is created by the distorting consciousness. The consciousness in the individual distorts the experience, and then, of course, it experiences what it does experience. As pain and suffering and evil and death and so on. How did this happen? This is called due to the separation of the individual from the divine. The individual self-aware consciousness that woke into the process of universal evolution divided itself, separated itself from the supreme consciousness. This is what the Bible speaks of as the fall of man. The fall of man is the separation of the individual self-aware that came into the process of manifestation from the source, from which it has emanated. It has separated itself. Therefore, it has now invited all the complicated difficulties of a divided being. And there is a separation and a division from the divine. And when you say Adam and Eve, it means only from the Indian point of view, it is the soul tempted by the potentialities which he saw in nature. You see? The soul attracted by or tempted by nature. Eve is the nature, you see? And the soul felt automatically there were tremendous potentialities in nature. And so it took the you can say the jump, or took the risk, you see, took the risk of, well, that is how he puts it in one of his books, the riddle of the universe. There, Maurice Magre, I think, came to Pondicherry, one of the members of French Academy, you see, in Paris. And he came very early, but he put a number of questions, and one of them was that why did the absolute, abandon, or why did the infinite abandon its status of knowledge and consciousness and delight and create this world? This is a very important problem for all philosophy, in fact. And those even that take for granted a supreme source, for them also this is an important question, because it is difficult to solve with the unity of the divine given all the time. And you all the time have to admit a dividing element, a dualistic element, to explain the existence of that which seems to be contrary to the existence or powers of the divine, you see. And so he asked this question, and he answered him well. He said that it is difficult to make out a convincing intellectual case, because for the mind to conceive something pre-existent to mind is itself a problem, you see. This mind is now putting the question, but what is anterior to mind? Mind itself is a creation of something which is beyond mind. And now for mind, after coming into existence, to put itself into a condition of that which pre-existed its own existence, it is very difficult for mind to conceive even. And it can only be given logically, is it not? You can't say, I will raise you to that experience, then the problem will be solved. But then the mind can't be easily raised unless it is willing. Then you have to go through a process of growth. Then it is called sadhana, it is called spiritual life. Then mind has to be stilled and has to become quiet and has to become open, has to become, capable of admitting that something greater than itself exists and to remain quiet. Then that mind can either allow the spirit to ascend to higher consciousness, or the higher consciousness can reflect itself into that mind and give it an experience of its reality, of its concreteness, of its existence. But apart from that, if logically you ask, well, the logical question is that you take the absolute. Now, absolute is not zero. Absolute is not void of all content. Otherwise, it won't be absolute. Absolute is not zero. Absolute is not nothing. How can absolute be mere nothing? In the absolute, you cannot conceive no content. Absolute is that in which all potentialities lie, you can say unmanifested. But everything must be there in the absolute. You cannot conceive of an absolute without any content in it, you see. So the absolute holds within itself all the potentialities of the cosmos, all the potentialities of knowledge, of power, of will, of creativity, of harmony, of substance, of anything conceivable. Well, infinite source of potentialities superior to all the potentialities that it holds. Of course, the absolute is not exhausted by all the potentialities. It is not as it were absolute and all the potentialities are equal. No, the absolute is more than the potentialities it holds, but all the potentialities are there all the time. You cannot conceive of an absolute that is zero, that is void, that is meaningless and has nothing in it. Then you have to call it nihil, is it not? Then you don't call it absolute. Yes, a positive content is implied. Only what it contains, it is more than what it contains. That's all that you can say at the most in order to justify its name as the absolute. Now, these potentialities of the absolute, mathematically speaking, you can say that it can hold an opposite potentiality also. Is it not? An absolute can hold all positive potentialities, but it can hold also all negative potentialities. And one of the negative potentialities of the absolute is, can it become absolutely inconscient? Can it become absolutely inconscient? This is one potentiality. Now, these potentialities in the absolute are not mental potentialities. In the mind can hold 1,000, seed ideas, and all of them might be imperfect because all of them can't be realized. All mental potentialities that we have, are not capable of being materialized, so to say, in life. Man can hold that I can, fly to moon. Well, he will fly one day, but immediately there might be prospects in which you can say that all mental potentialities have not sufficient power to realize themselves, to materialize themselves. All that the mind conceives as potential or possible, is not capable of being materialized. But this potentiality of which we are talking now is pre-existent to mind, and it is a potentiality of the absolute. It is a potentiality above mind, above the mental consciousness. And there in the consciousness above the mind, all potentialities are charged with the power of realizing themselves. It's a divine idea, as he would call it, you see. It is a real idea, if you like to call it. A potentiality which is charged with the will of the Supreme. It is not a potentiality which is imagined, fabricated, which is an abstraction of human intelligence. No, this is a potentiality filled with the power of self-realization, filled with the power of self-materialization. Now, if in the absolute the one potentiality is to materialize the very opposite of itself, to materialize the very opposite of itself, then it would certainly realize itself as that, is it not? If the divine, if an emperor, let us take a rough instance, if an emperor should think or hold within his mind that my being an emperor, if it is a genuine emperorship, then the empire would come back to me even if I relinquish my throne, is it not? Even if I relinquish my throne and get away from my throne, if I am an emperor, it will come back to me. Essentially, if I am one who rules the world, well, if I cease to rule the world, I will again attain the position of ruling the world, isn't it? Yes, this is the challenge of the you can say, the attraction of Adam for Eve. You see, this is the potentiality of the absolute seen as just the opposite of all the affirmations and positive elements it holds. The most negative. Can it reduce itself to inconscience? Yes. And even from the inconscience it can recover its absoluteness. You see, that is the power of the omniscience and power of omnipotence. It allows itself to be reduced to inconscience because it's a potentiality held in the absolute, one potentiality which can negate everything of the absolute, materialized itself. That is the world. That is the world. You see, mathematically the infinite can reduce itself to zero. One potentiality is that all the terms are reducible to zero. Well, if it actually becomes a zero, can it again attain the infinity? Or put it in a different way, that if a grain of gold is lost on the sands of the sea, the chance of recovering it mathematically is, you can say it is a chance, mathematics of chance. You have a chance of recovering it. Only you can say, oh, it will take eons and eons, but you will get back your grain, because grains are not in that say innumerable. They are quite innumerable for the human mind. But for a mathematician who says that, no, I will try for all potentialities, then he says, no, you can recover it. Only the chance is, well, 1 to 0. Or, you most probably won't be able to recover it. But it is possible. It is within possibility to get it back. Well, that is what the omnipotence seems to have undertaken in the creation of the world, if you like to put it in human terms. This is the human logical way of looking at the problem. This is not a solution. This is how mind can look at it. That if the Supreme allows the very opposite of its constitution to come into being and subject himself to all that is opposite of itself, even then, because it is essentially divine, it tends always to recover its original divinity. It cannot be permanently, under the, well, that fall is a creation of the ego, and it was the necessity also of the process of evolution. It was the necessity because otherwise the many would not have come into being out of the one. The many to come into being out of the one necessitated the creation of a self-aware center. And this self-aware center had to first of all feel as if it was the center of the universe. Well, then each ego feeling itself as if it was central to the universe created an ego. It is really the one that has become the many. But the one that comes into many does not feel that I am the one. It feels I am the only one. Is it not? It feels I am the only one. Well, when it feels I am the only one, well, it conflicts with that which it does not feel itself one with the other. Each one of the many feels itself as a universe. Each one of the many feels itself as a universe. And instead of thinking as one term of the universe, it feels I am the center of the universe, you see. And then, of course, the conflict and the difficulty of the many, the multiplicity arises. Formation of the ego consciousness, the egocentric outlook is, Sri Aurobindo says here, is only a prelude. It is not a final creation. It is a prelude to something that has to come and that has to follow. The formation of the ego is the first act because that brings into existence the self-aware entity and a subjective self, an individual who creates pain and suffering and duality and death and evil and all kinds of distortions of the experience of the individual is there. But there is an inevitable condition through which evolution has to pass. That creates a universe of disharmony instead of harmony of the Satchitananda. And when the ego is enlarged into the universal consciousness, then experience do not change. The progress lies in moving from this egocentricity into universal consciousness or cosmic consciousness. This ego itself realizing that it is universal. When it realizes the universal, the experience does not change, but the significance of the experience, the cognition of the experience completely changes. When a man lives in the cosmic consciousness, the sun doesn't begin to rise from the west. Yes. Or there are accidents and difficulties and people, have troubles and all kinds of conflicts in life and suffering is there. But when he looks at the suffering, it is quite different. You see, the cognition, the rendering of experience significance, the revaluation takes place. So that when something is seen, it is not seen as the individual distorting consciousness is, but as it is to be seen from the cosmic consciousness or universal consciousness. Then it is seen quite differently, so differently that it is difficult to convey the idea of it to the individual who doesn't know that one could see so differently and so radically differently, in fact, the whole range of human experience. That is how he wrote in Savitri also, that in the worm he sees the coming God. In the worm he sees the coming God. You see, when you live in that, you see that, yes, that is how this is going to develop and coming to this. And that is how, when suffering comes to man in life, the people who have that spiritual experience and attitude look at it quite in a different light altogether. I give you one instance, for instance, of a man who became the governor of several provinces in India and who was my co-student. We studied together. Now, he was an orphan, you see. At 9, his father died. And he was therefore in great difficulty because he was poor. And his mother had to somehow provide. And she knew that, she told him that she can't educate him. So he had to win the scholarships throughout in order to maintain himself as a student and go on studying. Well, he did. And he became, all the time on scholarships. He went on learning by the help which he attained by scholarships, you see. And he then appeared for the ICS, the Indian Civil Service, passed that, and was appointed Secretary of the Government, and he became one of the governors of India afterwards, one of these provinces in India. Now, Mr. Trivedi, he was my friend. Now, if somebody had looked at his becoming an orphan when he was 9, one would see that it is a very great infliction and suffering that has come to. Oh, poor boy, what a suffering, what a terrible thing, you would all the time would sympathize and think that great calamity had fallen. But if you look at it now, retrospectively, it looks as if, well, it was not an unmixed evil, it was in a sense good. He became what he is now because there was difficulty. If it was not there, he wouldn't become what he is. Isn't it? You see, even that way, the evaluation changes when you see, much more so when you live in the cosmic consciousness. It's absolutely different. So different, unimaginably different. That is how, values of morality and social values of ethics are very relative to a spiritual man. And he can't all the time break social values naturally because he wants society to go on. But if they have no relevance, absolutely none. I give another instance. Take French Revolution, a collective movement. This is the individual case. Take a collective case. Now, one who lived in the time of French Revolution, he would have said, "This is a hell of a time, is it not?" 500 people being killed every day. And by guillotining, that is not a good process. Shooting or electrocuting is a good enough process. I mean, it is kind enough comparatively. It is merciful to electrocute. 1 second when is it? It's guillotining. You say, I don't know whether how many of you know the guillotine. Well, a very primitive method of killing people, and every day 500 people for months together in Paris. Now, people living at that time would have think this is really the dark age, the darkest age imaginable. But go 100 years forward and then you see French Revolution, it is that gave democracy, equality and fraternity. Yes, liberty, equality, fraternity. And the political constitution of all the nations of Europe underwent a change because of the French Revolution. Austria and all the political changes that came because of the French Revolution. Well, the European constitution became democratic after that. And the rule of law, that everybody is equal before law, the rights of man, all these things came after the French Revolution. So that it was an unmixed evil at the time when it occurred. And yet, what it contributed and what it meant in terms of human progress is something quite different. It is not that suffering was not there or was not true or there was no reality in it. There was true. But also this is equally true, and perhaps this is a more lasting contribution. Well, that is how the individuals fall into the ego has to be seen. And all that comes in the realm of human experience has to be, if you want to rise and solve the problem, is to be seen that in a way that one day this temporary condition which is imposed on man has to be overpassed, and man will overpass it. He has got to overpass it, because if he doesn't overpass it, then he doesn't progress from the point of view of Aurobindo. To see, now you can say that this disharmony that is produced, is pain and suffering and death, you see, if he can change his viewpoint and rise into the consciousness, he will see that what is appearing as death is only a change in a mortal life. And what is pain is only a distortion of essential delight. It is a question of only vibration. You see, these are all relative vibrations. To a man living in the North Pole, well, what you feel as cold will not be cold at all. He says it's very normal, very nice. You see, our conception, a sense, images or sense experience of heat and cold are relative. You see, it moves like that. To one, heat and cold is here, to another here, like that. There is no fixed absolute good or bad, absolute heat and cold. Well, in the same way, pain is not it's only a washback, as he says in Life Divine. He says it's a washback of the universal delight. Universal delight, when it rushes, you feel joy. When it goes back, you feel pain. But it's a delight. And he gave one instance of his own experience one day when he was talking, that he wanted to see whether pain could be transformed into joy. And he saw that if you refuse to admit the first vibration, then you find that it is quite possible to transform, pain into joy. And mother gave an instance of her own brother who got a good knock on his, toe. He dashed himself against and great pain. And he was like, then he got wild and pressed that very toe more powerfully than the knock. And he was all right afterwards. He said, I pressed so hard that the pain disappeared. A greater vibration of pain than what was there. You see, it immediately left him. I think he tried also once. The unity he tried by lighting a match and putting his finger into it, I think. It didn't influence him. He put his finger in lighted match. Just an idea must have occurred to him, and he put it there inside. Well, nothing happened. And when he got this fracture on the leg, femur, in 1938, then he said that this is one test for the establishment of perfect equanimity, and not only that, but also to try to transform the pain into joy. Now that's how, you see how much impersonal you can become with regard to pain. You can see when his leg is fractured and so on, he is thinking that this is an opportunity for transforming and first establishing perfect samatha on the material level, equality, equanimity of temperament in the nervous being also. No reaction of the nerve that something tremendous has happened, that is one. And secondly, to transform the pain into joy, if it is possible, into delight. You see, that gives us some idea of how much revaluation is possible. Of course, you can't say that therefore there is no suffering. That would be too cruel to man. You see, to say that, oh, you suffer, it's all nonsense. One does suffer. Because each value is true where it holds. Values of ignorance are true in ignorance. Values of knowledge are true where you have knowledge. When the higher consciousness is there, the value is there. Then the lower consciousness is there, the other value is equally true. But what is the first appearance or evidence of the sense is not final. That one has to understand. The first reaction that comes to ego, to duality, to sense, is not the true reaction. That one has to grant, he says. The first what appears to the sense is that the sun is going round the earth. That is first the evidence of the sense. Well, knowledge says that is not true. The earth is going round the sun. Well, and then in the same way, I am in the center of the universe. And everything must be judged by reference to what happens to me. And instead, then, Sachidananda or the divine is the truth and the individual is going round. That is the truth. You see, that is really the truth. Well, that just as you correct the evidence of the senses in science, you have to correct the evidence of psychology by reference to the true psychological center, well, which is there and which has to be attained by a process of growth. This cannot be proved by science, you see. You see, it seems to the, he puts it very humorously in Life Divine, he says, to the egoistic consciousness, God seems to be going round the ego, and ego sits in judgment on the works of God. And the truth is that the divine is the center, and mind and man and all his experiences find their true meaning and significance and value and their truth in the universal and in the transcendent, in the divine. Mind has to find, and mental being and vital being has to find its true experience and truth in the divine. Well, therefore, to transcend is the goal, and to transmute this experience into different valuation, a transvaluation of experience is the necessity. Then the question does come about, so many philosophers and thinkers have stumbled over it, that is such a perfection possible here on earth, in human life? This fall is all right, you say that, so this fall is indispensable to create an individuality. And then after creation of the ego, there is a dissolution of the ego. And by dissolving the ego, there is a possibility of ascending to a higher consciousness. Now, is this possible on earth? Is this possible in life? because many people believe that that is not possible here. But he's trying to work out that the law of imperfection is the only law of this world. And there are two or three schools which almost reduce this problem to a problem of unreality of the world or imperfection of the world. In the Christian belief, there is the idea that this is a world of test, is it right? It is a world in which perfection is intentionally put by the divine as a permanent element. Imperfection is put, suffering is put, as a test for the human soul, and to test his faith and his piety and his devotion and so on. And if he fulfills all that, then he will be rewarded in heaven, not here. That is what the Shankarites also believe in from Indian point of view, that this is a world which will be always a Maya, always an illusory world, not a world of reality. And the same almost comes the standpoint of Buddhism also, that you have only to withdraw from expression in order to get rid of suffering. Give up not only attachment, but give up the very ego sense of being. The very being must be completely got over in order to eliminate the problem of evil. So, is it possible to transcend this ego formation here and dissolve it, so to say, by opening the individual consciousness to a universal consciousness or to a divine consciousness, or to in the cosmic consciousness first and divine consciousness afterwards? This conviction to man that this is possible is hard, though it is not totally impossible to make some logic out of it, because man is a mental being. He says, if you had taken an ape and tried to convince him that from monkey or from the ape state, gorilla and chimpanzee, a gradual evolution of man was possible, and that there could be a being called man with intellect and with power of judgment and control of nature, the monkey would not believe it. And if you tell him that it is from him that such a being come, he will believe it to be still more impossible. For man, the advantage is that he has got a mind. A monkey or an ape cannot conceive the possibility of a more perfect being evolving from himself, but man can. Man has a mind, and this mind can conceive a possible perfection to the human being. Well, in that respect, he says that man is a more advanced organism, and the greater possibility of the divine can be conceived by man. And ordinarily, when man's reason is confronted with this problem, it doesn't want to admit it, and it says this is either superstition or mental abstraction or an idea or imagination, or as he puts it very finely in Life Divine, he calls it inspiring vision of the impossible. To the mind of man, to the reason of man, this possibility of man's transcending his ego formula appears to be an inspiring vision of the impossible. That it is impossible. But reason itself is all the time trying to transcend. Though reason, when it is confronted with the problem of consciousness, refuses to admit the solution, reason, when it acts, it always is trying to go beyond the data that is given. What does reason do? Facts are given and sensation is given. The sensation is of one kind. The conclusion of reason is quite different. The reason itself is trying all the time to transcend the data that is given to it, because reason is trying to pursue knowledge. Knowledge means the truth. And in pursuing truth, well, reason is bound all the time to transcend that which is presented to it as evidence of the sense or perception. It is all the time to go beyond what is given to it. So when reason tries to refuse the possibility of human evolution beyond ego, well, reason itself is not consistent, because reason is all the time trying to go beyond the presented formulas or sensations that are there. For instance, it is, you say that it is not possible to reject pain. It is not possible to reject death. First reaction of reason is that, is it? How can you reject pain when pain is there? How can you reject death when death is there? And yet, he says, the impulse of life is not to accept pain as natural. The very instinct of life is not to accept pain as if it was, oh, yes, of course, pain would always be there. No, no human being, however unevolved, feels that pain is a natural element. No, pain is always felt as alien. See, nobody thinks that, in spite of reason, is trying all the time to conquer death by conquering diseases. If it didn't believe in the possibility, it wouldn't try. You see, it is all the time trying. Well, the vitality of life always refuses the fact of death, and the instinct is always to feel that life could be immortal. Well, reason's defect here is that it is overcome by apparent fact that face this gaze of reason. You see, facts, appearances, immediate appearance of things is so appalling that reason doesn't believe that it could be overcome. Well, it is overcome by the defect of the defect is the apparent fact overcomes reason, and reason is not able to see the potentiality. And really speaking, truth comes or knowledge comes by looking at the potentiality and turning the potentiality into an actuality. Now, reason must see the potentiality, but it sees actuality and is overcome and says this is not possible. But you see, if it sees the potentiality, then knowledge would consist in turning the potentiality into an actuality. And this potentiality realization, because present potentiality is a clue to future realization. This is the process of growth. And there I want to take up one point that in such solutions that are offered by books like Life Divine, people always think that this is a utopian solution, isn't it? That's what people always think. This is utopian. Oh, it is, flight of mind or imagination or a very great ideal conceived but apart from the world. Well, in considering the solution offered by such a great work like Life Divine, which brings before us the problem of turning this divine potentiality of man into an actuality, into a realization, one has to keep his mind open and admit untried possibilities and undertake risks of experiment in new directions. This we must do. In this regard, I am glad to find that Vinoba Bhave, though he follows a particular line of thought for himself and action, he has the goodness to keep his mind open to other and quite different kinds of possibilities. He is trying to live up to the ideal of world as one family. Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, as they say in Sanskrit. World as one family. And he has been preaching this same in his pilgrimage, which he carries out on foot. This I don't know how many of you know about Vinoba. Walking every day 5 to 7 miles a day and trying to preach this idea of one family, the whole world as one family. And after years of experience, he accepts the possibility of spreading the same idea without resorting to any outer means, without walking on foot. He has admitted in several of his speeches that I am working, but I know that if somebody could sit down in his house and, rise to this dynamic thought and make the thought active and dynamic, well, it would work. It's not necessary for everyone to walk on foot 7 miles a day in order to spread the idea. By attaining to a certain spiritual poise, he believes it is possible to spread the idea and work out the results in life sitting at one place. It would be like launching a ballistic missile from previously prepared base, directing it to a target. That's what science does today, isn't it? You sit at a place, you don't go out, you prepare a base, and from there you prepare everything and direct it there, and it goes where you want it to go, does it not? Well, if you can so direct a missile, well, you can direct a will, you can direct a consciousness. Why not? This is what Vinoba himself has said, and partly accepting that one need not walk every day 7 miles in order to realize or to preach this idea. One can do it by directing the consciousness. If he lives in the right consciousness, by directing it to this purpose, he can succeed. This book, this portion which we are reading, certainly, and the whole book of Life Divine propounds the possibility and inevitability of evolving from mind to a higher consciousness, to a greater consciousness. Omnipresent reality is, as we know, the basis, fundamental substance of the cosmos. And this is active in the universe in three positions, as we have already seen: the individual, the universe, and the transcendent. And in all the three, it is identical. Universe is a movement of evolution from the apparent inconscience to a greater and greater degree of consciousness. It's a process of in the opposite direction of the involution, in which there was a gradual covering of the original reality, creating a world at every downward step of the Supreme. The process of evolution has proceeded from matter to life, from life to mind. Man, the mental being, is a transitional being because he has yet to ascend to a higher consciousness beyond mind. This is the great spiritual odyssey that is now to be undertaken consciously by man. In material science, if material science lays open before men practical unlimited field of adventure and research and experience in the outer interstellar space, the supramental is not without those attractions also. Life divine is a call to a spiritual adventure, to a spiritual exploration. It initiates a vision of heights of consciousness which have indeed been glimpsed and visited, but have yet to be discovered and mapped in their completeness. This is from his own book, you see. The highest of these peaks, the elevated plateaus of consciousness, the supramental, lies far beyond the possibility of any satisfying mental scheme or map of it, or any grasp of mental seeing and description. That is from Life Divine. On those unexplored heights, there lie inexhaustible treasures of light, of power, which can effectively help mankind to solve its problems. A call is upon the young today all over the world, and it is for them to answer. Life divine is not a poetical dream. It is not an abstract weaving of mere intellect. It's a discovery that makes available a new source of knowledge and power to man. This is what I spoke at Benares. And I wanted to put in here at this point because I think it is important to note the implications of it in the modern context. You see, that this assertion that there is a source of power available to men is not merely a speculation unrelated to the so-called hard realities of life. That is what men always talk, hard realities, as if the divine is not a reality, you see, yes, all the time. Of life may be seen from a statement of Sri Aurobindo himself. This is a statement. His retirement from outer activity did not mean, as most people supposed, that he had retired into some height of spiritual experience, devoid of any further interest in the world or in life. It could not mean that. For the very principle of his yoga is not only to realize the divine and attain to a complete spiritual consciousness, but also to take all life and all world activity into the scope of this spiritual consciousness and action, and to base life on the spirit and give it a spiritual meaning. In his retirement, he kept a close watch on all that was happening in the world and in India, and actively intervened whenever necessary, but solely with a spiritual force and silent spiritual action. For it is part of the experience of those who have advanced in yoga that besides the ordinary forces and activities of mind and life and body in matter, there are other forces and powers that can and do act from behind and from above. There is also a spiritual dynamic power which can be possessed by those who are advanced in spiritual consciousness, though all do not care to possess or possessing to use it. And this power is greater than any other and more effective. It was this force which Aurobindo used at first only in a limited field of personal work, but afterwards in a constant action upon world forces. And he had reason to believe that the Pick Savitri he wrote, this world is a beginning and a base, where mind, life and mind erect their structured dreams. An unborn power must build reality. We have here already structures of life and structures created by mind in our human life today. Well, it is all right, he says. It's a beginning and a base where life and mind create their structured dreams. But if you want to build reality, an unborn power must build reality. It is that which can build reality here. Supermind brings to birth this unknown power. And then people think that power all the time. So I will give what Mother has to say on this problem. Is it only this supramental truth consciousness, only power, only knowledge and illumination? It is much more. Listen to the voice of the maternal divine love. O beloved children, sorrowful and ignorant, and thou, O rebellious and violent nature, open your hearts, tranquilize your force. It is the omnipotence of love that is coming to you. You see? So, well, that is, I think, is quite enough for the day.